Hi everybody, I am Debbie Davis and I'm an alcoholic. And as I mentioned yesterday, it's really been delightful to be here and to see so many friends from the past, to make new friends, to experience the first 9 steps, to get to share about sponsorship with Marnie, and to just be here in this beautiful hotel. And thank you again, Jerry, for this invitation. Grateful. And I certainly want to thank the outstanding host and hostess we've had. Mouse, also known as Michelle, or Michelle, also known as Mouse, has been a go-getter. And where's Johnny? I was told he loves Marilyn. He even named a dog after me. So it's too early for your birthday.
Almost had a heart attack.
But I want you to know that Marilyn loves Johnny. She's so fun, you know. Now to my alter ego, Debbie, right? So I get the pleasure of sharing my experience on steps 10, 11, and 12. And I'm going to kind of start a little bit backwards. And what I mean by that is, step 12 starts with having had a spiritual awakening, as THE, not THE, the, not. So I tell the people I sponsor, do not be sloppy when you say the 12th step. The meanings are two very different meanings when you say a result or the result. So do not be sloppy. The result of taking the steps will be a spiritual awakening. And I needed an awakened spirit. It had been dead, dormant, whatever is the apt description. And in the 12 and 12, I know some people have opinions on the 12 and 12, and I do too. I love it. Okay? And I'm going to read one paragraph that it puts in here about spiritual awakening, and I'm going to read it in first person. And see if this has happened to you. It says, maybe there are as many definitions of spiritual awakening as there are people who have had them. But certainly each genuine one has something in common with all the others. Now, some of you may have had a Bill Wilson experience, a kapow, a band playing. Some of you may have had what he also refers to as the educational variety. It came slowly, and only when you're here do you look back and you say, whoa, this has been happening. I have been awakened. To go on. And these things, which they have in common, are not too hard to understand. When a man or woman, when I have a spiritual awakening, the most important meaning of it is that I have now become able to do, feel, and believe that which I could not do before on my unaided strength and resources alone. I've been granted a gift, which amounts to a new state of consciousness and being. I've been set on a path, which tells me I'm really going somewhere. That life is not a dead end, not something to be endured or mastered. In a very real sense, I have been transformed indeed. Because I've laid hold source of a strength which in one way or another I had hitherto denied myself. I find myself in possession of a degree of honesty, tolerance, unselfishness, peace of mind, and love of which I thought myself quite incapable. What I have received is a free gift. Yet usually, at least in some small part, I've made myself ready to receive it. That's the first 11 steps. If you've had a spiritual awakening, if you have taken those first 11 steps, we do promise you an awakened spirit. So what does that look like for me? My sobriety date is February 8, 1976, which means I've been with you for over 47 years. And like I said, it's hard to believe. It almost feels sometimes like I'm lying, because how do you be 47 years sober when you're 39 years old, right? So it just doesn't quite mesh up. But let me tell you, you never say that internationally, because they start trying to figure that out. You know, you guys got it figured out, but they're like 47 and 30. You know, they're all trying to calculate. It doesn't play well. So on the 7th of February, 1976, I had what I call my psychic change, where for the first time since I'd been introduced to you, I took my first drink at 12. At 17, I was sent and committed, court ordered to a treatment program. I would visit you on a now and then basis for the next 10 months. I would have 2 more relapses or slips or whatever you want to call them. And on the second one, without invitation, without asking for a prayer for help, I would have what I call my spiritual or my psychic change. And I was in a different path that night than I was about 5 hours before then. And I knew I didn't want that loaded, altered, adjusted way of life anymore. It was no longer a go-to. But for some reason, those people in AA seemed to know what to do. And I took my sobriety date starting the next day. And I realized that it wasn't an and that my life was unmanageable. It was definitely a dash. That my life was unmanageable, drunk or sober. And I come to see that still today over and over at times when it's more unmanageable than others. That doesn't mean to me that I'm not to be responsible for my life, that I can just run hairy-scary. It means I am responsible for the things I am, getting up on time, setting alarms, showing up at commitments, things like that. It doesn't mean that I just haphazardly live through life. And when I went into the second step, for a long time, I did not understand what that meant. I would give it, it went right over my head. And even though when Billy said one of the common things we talk about is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results, I really didn't think that drinking. But I was 2.5 years sober the very first time I heard that, and I looked at that as my sober life. I always intended to get drunk, get rip-roaring out there, whatever it was. I never expected different results. I never tried to adjust my drinking those 5 years. I always had an intention and a plan, get drunk as fast, whatever. But sober life, I was doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. And so many times I look at these steps, not just pre-AA, but living right here, right now, today. And that third step, yes, I make that decision every day. In the beginning, it was kind of a bigger decision, a more pronounced decision, but this is a prayer that I start with every day. Because I back it up with the 7th step prayer, but I start it just to start with the humility of try to get me out of my way, relieve me of the bondage of self. So I can better do your will, not to become more wonderful, more popular, more this, more that. It's about, again, taking on the tact of being more useful. When I did that inventory, I've taken a number of inventories. I'm not somebody who does one every year. I'm not someone who does 1 through 12, 1 through 12, 1 through 12, because I, again, believe that if I need to do an in-depth inventory, what am I not doing the rest of the year? I mean, this is about becoming aware and then taking action, not just more analysis. And so I've done a number of those inventories. They've all had the different level that I could go. That first inventory was about as deep as a dime. You know, there was just no ability to go that far down. I didn't have the capability. I didn't have the language. I didn't have the awareness. But as time goes on, and I would come to really treasure that fourth column, which would be useful in so many other ways. What was my involvement? my wrongs, my blames, my faults, my mistakes, not my part. And so that began to reshape how I looked at things, could look at them differently, and then just sharing them with that in that fifth step. Some were long fifth steps, some were very brief. It wasn't about the quantity, it was about the quality. So now I've exposed that, and by doing that inventory and exposing it to another human being, it had opened up the opportunity for God's healing work to be done. It's like I grew up in the Midwest, and we often had those cellars, and that's where canned goods, it was always cool down there, was rarely finished, but it was cool. And you throw open the doors, and the dust would come up or whatever, but I just felt that's what an inventory was to me. You just threw open the door so the sunlight of the Spirit could come in and begin the healing process. I love 6 and 7. 6 for me, the way I take the sixth step is a little bit different than a lot of people. I take a piece of paper, put a line down the middle, because I'm very visual. It's helpful to me to have kind of a plan. I say that loosely. But what were my objectionables? I couldn't think them up here, but I got from that inventory, fourth column, my objectionables were things like self-righteousness and judgmental and impatient. What were some of those things that caused me and or other people harm? Those objectionables. And on the other side of the paper, what might be that contrary action? Yes, God's going to be the one to remove it, but they're never removed entirely. They just lie under that surface at varying degrees. Because I'm afraid, or I'm not feeling well, or things aren't going the way maybe I want them to. Those babies come right up to the surface. It's just that because the 12 and 12 does tell me in step 6 that God doesn't make us white as snow and keep us that way without our cooperation. And in 2 places in the 12 and 12 in step 6, it talks about my cooperation, my action to take. And so that's where I get that cue. And so in 7, what would be the contrary action? And for my own self, that list goes something like, on self-righteousness, the contrary action is shut up. Really, just real simple. Stop giving unsolicited advice. Stop telling people what they should do. Gosh, it was amazing how when I finally kind of put that down, how much I did that. And again, the judgmental, I can't even believe that still today I will make a prejudgment and I haven't even met that person yet. But I got them all judged out, that's for sure, only to time and time again be wrong about the character because I was too focused on maybe the outside of the person or what I heard them say and maybe misunderstood. So 6 and 7 are ongoing for me. They are, because the defects have never been, I wanted them to go poof, go away forever and ever, but that isn't how it's worked for me. They've just lessened in frequency. And if you have that visual in your mind about putting that line down the middle, pause is all down the middle. Pause before I do that action. Pause before I do this one. And so then in 8, I've got that list from that inventory. And some of those amends, making that list, I didn't have that many. I have 1 left to make. I'm trying to find that person, so that's, to my knowledge, I only have 1 left. But one of them took me a long, long time because the key in amends is forgiveness. And I knew in this one particular amend, which was to my stepmother, I could get up to 90%. But I couldn't cross that 10% line. And I knew of all of the amends, this was the one that cannot be anything less than 100%. And that's its own story, but therein lied my greatest lesson on amends. And again, we've heard such great explanation an experience on these first 9 steps. And that leads us to 10. So for me, again, 1 through 9 is my history and cleaning up the past as best as I can. Now I'm going to go forward. And now I'm going to go into each new day. And there's, step 10 kind of has some, I'll say to me, conflicting guidance. Many times I'll hear people say, I do a 10th step every night. And if that's a review of your day, that's what you want to call it, that's fine. To me, that's an 11th step. That's part of step 11. But in the 12 and 12, it talks about nightly reviews or maybe quarterly reviews. And again, I don't care what you call your review at night, just do it. You know, I don't care if it's step 33, you know, do it. Because for me, step 10 is about keeping the day clean as I go through it. And step 11's review at night is my catch basin in case I've justified anything during the day that I didn't think I really needed to make amends for. Some years ago, I was overhearing, some might say eavesdropping, but I was overhearing the late, great Tom I, who many of us knew and loved. And I heard him, now for years, and again, if this is your thinking, I have, again, no opinion on it. For years I heard that steps 10, 11, and 12 were the maintenance steps. And I thought, well, that makes sense. I mean, we've cleaned up the wreckage of our past, and now we're maintaining our recovery and so forth. And that's got some, basis and truth to it. And then probably 18 whatever years ago, I heard Tom say, they're not the maintenance steps, they're the growth steps. Well, that perked up my ears, and I thought, I'm sure he's not wrong, but, I need to go find this out. Why is he calling him that, right? Because, again, sometimes we come into an understanding and a belief that, yeah, that makes sense, but I'd never really give it much thought because it made sense. So when he said that, I started to go back into step 10. And where I get this growth steps is we have entered the world of the Spirit. Most of us know these 4 paragraphs. Our next function, and the function is an expected duty. Our next function is to grow. And it says in 2 different ways, to grow in understanding and to grow in effectiveness. So that really gave me an opportunity for some deeper thought. Am I growing in understanding? There's a lot of areas of my life that I have no experience. Let me rephrase that. There's a lot of areas in your life that I have no experience in. And so I will only have opinions about it, but no experience. And so that's why those opinions have to stay within me, because those are debatable, experiences not. I can't tell you how to raise children. I've never had that experience. I can tell you how to move in AA from city to city because I've had that experience. So just some examples of things that many people have the experience of here, but not everybody. So for me to try to tell you how to raise children or go through any process of that would be just foolish. You would say, yeah, but she doesn't understand. And you're right. I wouldn't. So when I started in my Growing in Understanding several years ago, in I guess 2018, Kent and I went to the International Conference of Secular AA. Okay? So primarily for atheists and agnostics. And we went to Toronto. And now Kent and I both are real clear, real comfortable, unquestioning about where we are with the relationship to our higher power. We both call that power God. But I wanted to know how to be more useful to those, that small minority of people who struggle in the rooms that are atheist and agnostic, etc. And so we went to this conference as students, really, to learn more about, so what does spiritual experience mean to you? What do you do? What do you say? What's your prayers look like? And, they've made step changes. I had a little hard time with that, but, these aren't meetings I'm going to. But again, I wanted to be more useful and not say the stupid things that they would have said to them, and so I could be for possibly a safe place for them that would not judge or think, well, you just keep coming around, kid, it'll, and it will for some, but it won't for everyone. We heard Billy Friday night talk about coming in a diehard atheist. My husband spent many years proving the non-existence of God until he was challenged. So maybe why don't you prove the existence of God? Shift. So again, many people come in here with a very different belief and thinking about a higher power, whatever you call that other power. But this was one of the ways that we wanted to be more useful in that way and took an action on it. The more effectiveness to me also is to be around people that do have ideas other than mine, especially listening to the minority opinions on things. Now, it's true that when Kent and I are having a group conscience on something, and he has a differing opinion than me, he is the minority opinion, he is. But I listen very carefully to what he has to say. But I'm not going to be effective if I'm deaf, if I am unwilling to consider something else. And so I started making decisions based on, is this going to be useful or helpful or effective for anybody besides me? And I started making decisions differently, like in my personal life and projects I might have had that I would have really enjoyed. But the hours spent doing it that would have no purpose for anybody but me, that I could easily look up in the internet, and how much would I really look at this project? I decided to let it go and saved myself a lot of hours of time that could have been used for something else. When I was 26 years sober, there's another part in this particular 4 paragraphs about the daily reprieve. And when I was 26 years sober, Kent and I had been married a year. And I was just like feeling at the top of my world. I'm 26 years sober, we're married a year. It's just a happy, happy life. I've been very active for decades, a few decades in Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm not a check the box kind of girl. I'm not holding up the wall. I am a member. I'm not an attender or a visitor. I am in the middle of you. Strong relationship with a higher power, home group, service, sponsoring. I don't know what else to, and these are, again, not checklist items. These are full engagements. And we went back to Atlanta because this was the last of the people, places, and things important in my life that I wanted him to see. So we go back there, and we go to my old home group on Friday night, have a great time. Saturday we get ready, we go see I had some non-alcoholic friends, and they were having a lunch for us. And we sat down at the table, and there was pre-poured wine at the table. Now, there's 10 of us, and I've been around booze before. I don't intentionally go around it. I don't go to bars and test my willpower, and I don't do any of that kind of stuff. But I've certainly been at restaurants where you're offered alcohol and you say, no thank you, turn your glass over. You don't need to recite chapter 3 or anything like that. Just no is usually quite sufficient. And so I rarely have it already poured. Now do keep in mind, there's 10 people at the table. There are 2 bottles of wine. There's a math problem here, right? In the drinking days, Kent would have one, I'd have one, we'd say, where's yours, right? Kind of thing. But there are 2. And I confirmed the beverage, and my knee-jerk reaction was I just pushed it out of the side. That was just without thought. And I would have kind of these out-of-body experiences almost of looking at the table, and these people are laughing and chatting, sip, sip, eat, laugh, chat, sip, sip. I mean, these are not throwing them down. These are people who are just really enjoying, I guess, the bouquet. I never smelled a thing, I just bombed. And so they're enjoying the experience, and I am observing it quite differently. Okay, time's up, we leave, and I had like this icky feeling. You know how you walk into a cobweb you didn't see and you're going, trying to get all that icky fine web off you? That's what I felt like on the inside. Just, God, it was weird. Thinking it would blow away. 2 days it's still there. 2 days later. But what that event would kick off for me is for the next 6 months, the craving for drunkenness. Now, I don't know how to explain it any other way, but it was like a chemical imbalance that only drunkenness would fit. A lot of the gals will understand this. When you have a craving for chocolate, saltines will not fix that. It's so deep and so serious, it's like, give me the chocolate and nobody gets hurt. It's that serious, right? That's how this felt. And I'm like, what is going on? It's scaring me. And it would for the next 6 months. It would hover around me like a buzzard waiting for me to kick off. I didn't understand it, and I didn't even know how to talk about it. I didn't know how to describe it to anybody. I would talk to Kent and Millie, my sponsor at the time. I've never heard anybody up here talk about it, so I'm like, well, I don't even know what to say. And my thoughts are, well, she must not be working a very good program. She must not have a God in her life. What is she doing wrong? I mean, that's what my assumption was going to be you were thinking. I started taking a look, okay, what takes people out? And I started looking at, a lot of times they pick up the drink in another fashion about 2 years before they pick up the liquid. It's a resentment. It's a move. It's a change. It's an adjustment of AA. It's not a commitment anymore. It becomes a convenience when it works out, when I get there, when I can. Lying, stealing, cheating, doing inappropriate behavior, keeping secrets. Are you doing any of those things? No. What's the plan? What's your solid plan? Are you still active with the sponsor, sponsees, God, home group service? Yes. Well, I don't know what else to do. I mean, it's not like do I go, okay, I got 2 a.m. available. Should I go to another meeting? Should I do, I've got that available. What more do I need to do to make this go away now and forever? And one day at a time, it was very, very scary. It'd be those times, I know that you've probably experienced this. I know I'm an alcoholic. And I would have those drunk nightmares. Now, I've never had a nightmare about gambling. I've never had a nightmare about overeating chocolate cake. But I've had a nightmare about alcohol and drinking. And when you have those nightmares, they are so vivid and real. And I know in mine, the ones I've had over the years, I'm always, when I do get sober, I move so I don't have to stand up for 30 days. I just can't do it. That's in the dream. But I wake up and your heart is going pound, 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 pound. You look up, oh, thank God, this is my bedroom. Oh, that's my husband. That's great. Because it wasn't always the case. So you start bringing your heart back in your chest again, right? And okay, this was just a nightmare. Okay. And I always look at those as freebies, if you will, just a free. Don't ever get too cocky, Deb, and think you got this. You don't need to do AA. This is what the future is. And so I would have those, and I did not know what to do. It wasn't like you better add meetings, you better add this, you better change this, stop this, start this. It was solid for decades. And one day, and I rarely go to morning meetings. They're just too early to get camera ready. I don't wake up looking like this. This takes coffee and effort and focus, So I'm not a morning meeting kind of girl. But I did this particular day, and I don't know why. But the meeting's over, and I leave to go home, and it's about a mile from where I live, this particular meeting, and I was gripped with the terror that I would drink against my will. Almost go into like a Stepford wife brownout. Just go into that trance. And I pulled over and I called Millie. And I was so afraid I was crying. I said, I don't know what's going on. And she listened to what I said, and she said, it was perfect. It wasn't new, but God knew I needed her more than anybody on the planet that day. And she said, what we have is alcoholism, not alcoholism. And again, I knew that, but when she said it out loud, I started to exhale. I'm not defective. I'm not doing anything wrong. And two things came to mind. One was a line in chapter 3 about that, alcoholism gets worse, never better. And I thought about that line, and this was the other line I thought about. We are not cured of alcoholism. What we really have is a daily, not a weekly, not a monthly, not an every AA birthday, a daily reprieve. And I looked up, again, some words I find enjoyable looking up, and reprieve, you probably know, is a delay of the death sentence. Oh, well, that makes it kind of pop off the page a little bit, right? What I really have is a daily delay of the death sentence. And isn't that what that is for people like us? It's a death sentence. It might not be like lights, camera, action death sentence, but it's worse when it's slow and lingering. Now it says we don't get that just because we're cute. It's contingent, cute like Masoon. It's contingent on the maintenance of our spiritual condition. Every day, not just Wednesdays or Thursdays, every day is a day when I must carry the vision of God's will into all my activities. How can I best serve thee? Once again, over and over it was mentioned this weekend about serving, serving, serving. Get out of me and into you. So that's some of my experience on step 10, which rolls us into how the 3 parts of a day in step 11. And again, the 12 and 12 is interesting. It starts with meditation and then it goes to prayer. And it has the beautiful St. Francis prayer in it. But step 11 is all about the 3 parts of the day. How to start my day with unawakening. It gives us some guidance for this 24 hours, this day, looking just at this day. To me, it's turning the light switch on. The key one for me is as I go through the day. This is the most helpful of the writings to me. As we go through the day, we pause. Oh, I tell you, that pause has been a lifesaver in my lack of needing to make amends. It really does. That pausing is such a brilliant guide. When agitated or doubtful, and apparently most people are one or the other, so I'm rarely doubtful. I am frequently agitated. I mean, throughout every day where there's agitations going on. Unchecked, they grow. But pause, what can you do about this? Anything, then do it. If not, move on. Focus, redirect. And it says we ask for the right thought or action. A lot of times it's do nothing. Do nothing, Deb. And I can't even count the number of times I'm so grateful I've done the do nothing, because I found I only knew a part of the information. I didn't have the whole package. It's none of my business. One of the things that I have learned in sponsoring is that I know they mean to tell you the whole picture, but there's like holes in that Swiss cheese. There's just something's not making sense. And so asking questions I find to be the best guide in riveting that out and finding out more about what this picture comes to life looking like. But the pause is about, so I'm in much less danger of, and these things apparently are dangerous for me, excitement, fear, anger, worry, self-pity, and my personal favorite, foolish decisions. I love that one. I've made so many of those. By not pausing, I've made so many of those. So what is step 11 to me? Really, it is, if I say the step as a prayer, it is about as complete as I can possibly get out of me. And that would look something like this. I seek how? Through prayer and meditation to do what? To improve my conscious contact with God as I understand Him. For what purpose? I pray only for the knowledge of your will for me and the power to carry whatever that is today out. And that's about as empty of self as I can get at the moment. As I said before, for me, my nightly review is step 11's closing of the day. My promptly isn't always maybe the definition of promptly. It could be 2 days later. I especially know if, let's say I was a little short or snarky on the phone that morning with somebody. I know it. And I've tried to go throughout the day sort of justifying it. They probably didn't notice. They probably don't care. They probably didn't think a thing of it. That night I'm still thinking about that. Oh yeah, we noticed. They noticed. And while it's embarrassing as a sponsor to make amends for that behavior, it is so incredibly valuable. Because if I don't, the message I send is mixed. That I'm the authority, that I'm the end all, that I am the final say-so. Don't question me. Don't challenge me. Don't call me on anything. And the greatest gift I can do is live this program right in front of their eyes. by making that amends. Like I say, sometimes it might take a couple days, and I make that phone call, and I make that apology, and that I regret that I said it in that tone. And so it almost brings us closer and more trusting together, that by me living right in front of their eyes this program, it makes it more trustworthy that we're on this path together and not, well, she's one on, so you get what I'm saying. So step 11. So now we get to the 12th step. In the big book, it talks an awful lot about working with others. That's the primary thing. How to go on a 12-step call. If you've never been on a wet, drunk 12-step call, make yourself available for that. They do still happen. And the way to do that is, in most cases, you give your name to the local central office. That's primarily where the calls come in. And they're not going to go down the yellow pages or white pages and see if you're available. You let them know your availability. Our area's made it so easy. And so probably the last one I went on, yes, they're not every day, but the last one I got a call from was maybe a year and a half ago. And so I am like in the middle of a whole bunch of things going on this day. And I take the afternoons Monday through Thursday because a lot of people and women are working. And I'm retired, so I take the afternoon calls. And I get calls. They usually don't want you to come out. You offer, they usually don't. But, okay, that's fine. But this particular day, and I'm in the middle of a training session, but my mother's been in the hospital, so I get an unlisted number calling me, and who might be, hi, this is central office calling. I got a 12-step call for you. And my immediate reaction was not great. It was, I am just muddling and mumbling and griping and whining under my breath, and I said, great, okay, what you got? Name, number, all this. And I'm thinking, like, am I the only one on the list, right? Can't they call? Who can I pass this on to, right? I got stuff going. And then the light comes on. I hung up the phone and thought, my sponsor is on her way up here. Guess what we're going to do? Yeah, perfect. So this is still kind of COVID-y times in that sense where people aren't going in, that sort of thing. And so Marilyn gets up there and she gets unpacked. I said, so when's the last time you've been on a wet 12-step call? She said, oh, it's been a while. I said, well, today's your lucky day. And she's like, yes, okay. So we roar off, I'm like 44 years sober. Marilyn's 48, and we're making a 12-step call, right? And it was, just lovely because we get to the house. We brought her some literature. She finally comes to the door. She was napping. And finally comes to the door, and we were practically getting a secondary drunk off of, the fumes and everything coming. And we sat there and we talked for about 45 minutes or whatever, and we could tell she was kind of at her max. We were just getting started, but she's at her max. So, but she did come to a few meetings. She did get a sponsor, and then, despite the fact that I tried to stay in touch with her, she never responded. But you see, one more time, the purpose of that isn't to be a do-gooder. The purpose of that is to pass on what was given to us, to show up when they can't show up, to answer the call for help, as the calls for help were answered for us. Let us never forget that. This is also part of sponsorship, when we tried to carry the message. Sponsorship is just that. I get almost a little angry when I hear of people unwilling to sponsor. I just think, you selfish person. That I usually say more than that, but you get the drift. Because, so people were there for you and opened up the door, had the literature out, made the coffee, welcomed you, but you have no responsibility to do that, huh? Okay. You know, Bob talked about last night about the 5%ers. That's the group I want to be in. And not for the recognition of it, but for my own spiritual well-being. This is how I get to practice the principles in all of my affairs. And probably the most challenging is in our home life. We can look really good in our AA meetings, but what do we do in the grocery store, on the freeway? A lot of times I know that we act a lot better if an AA member is with us. I mean, that's just human nature. There was I remember one time, I was in a movie theater and with a sponsee. And there was a woman down towards the front. These were the leveled, tiered seating. There was a woman down front. And I don't remember what the movie was, but she got up and she took, apparently her grandchild or somebody was behind her, and she took not just one, but 2 pictures during the movie of the grandchild having a good time. That woman's lucky she's alive today. You disrupt my movie experience and you are on the chopping block, baby. But because I had a sponsee there, trust me, I acted way better than I was thinking and feeling. It just astounded me. But this again is one of the things that I've learned to practice the principles in all my affairs. I need to have those checks in place sometimes. But what do I do and how do I behave when no one's watching? That is your character. There's a friend of mine who talked about his grandmother had this beautiful lawn. And he was asked to mow it. And he's a young boy. And he says the front lawn was immaculate and so forth, but he's been asked to mow the backyard. And he says, Grandma, why do we have to mow the backyard? Nobody sees it. She says, Sonny, the front yard is your reputation. The backyard is your character. To build up my character takes all 12 steps. To build up my character is a day at a time. To create character, for me, has been to be open-minded, to be willing, to be humbled, to be surrendered, to be sponsorable, to show up, to learn the difference between convenience and commitment. That's what character building has been for me. That step 7 talks all about character building. So, for allowing me to share my experience, strength, and hope, may we all continue to build our character and practice these principles in all of our affairs. Thank you so much.